March 20th, 2024 edition of the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, brought to you by the National Urban League. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm East Coast Executives. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. The Digital Career Success Series, DCSS as we call it, is a professional development series that helps members of our Urban League's young professional chapters and other diverse job seekers develop new skill sets that will enhance their careers through digital platforms such as webinars, Facebook, and Instagram Live. The goal is to provide an opportunity for professional development right from one's computer. If you want more, visit nuljobsnetwork.com. As we continue our personal celebration of Women's History Month, today's Digital Career Success Series, Empowering Futures, Women Leading the Way in AI, features Afua Bruce, and hopefully Angel as well. But right now, I know we have Afua on deck. Afua, how are you?
I am doing wonderfully. Thank you so much for having me today.
Listen, you know I'm extremely excited to have you. As I mentioned, you came highly recommended. I looked at your background before we had our initial conversation and was blown away by the work that you're doing. Not only the work at A&B Advisory Group, but just kind of some of the places you've been and the things you've been involved in. Amazing, kudos, and thank you for joining us. Please share with our audience a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. I am a computer engineer by training and have spent the last decade or decade and a half of my career really looking at the intersection of technology, policy, and society. So how does the technology that we have and that we create, how does it affect people? How does it affect communities? And what policies do we have in place to make sure that technology can actually be something that can be helpful to us and not hurtful to us? I have gotten to do that in a variety of places. I've worked at the White House. I've worked at the FBI. I've helped lead an organization that did data science and AI for mission-driven organizations all around the world, and also was an adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon University through that time as well. I also care a lot about making sure the children that we are raising are equipped with strong STEM interests and skills and to be responsible in the world. So I do a lot of outreach to the K through 8 age range, especially. And for my efforts there was recognized with a statue that was in the Smithsonian now 2 years ago. So that's me.
That definitely is you, and that's definitely a lot. We appreciate you, especially for this conversation, right? Because we're talking about transformative leadership and how it sets us up for future success or even future inclusion in the space as we talk about AI. So, we have your colleague scheduled to be on today. She may be running a little late. We're going to go to the next slide. So this is kind of unconventional, right? Because I want to jump in. And what I've consistently heard from individuals that are, I guess, let's just say fans and supporters of the Digital Career Success Series is that they don't necessarily completely understand AI and kind of it's a little mysterious to them. So I thought this bullet about this demystifying artificial intelligence was really important. But I am going to share with you before we get started. Our audience has been amazing throughout the years that we've done this show, and they're going to have questions. I'm going to ask that they submit their questions in the Q&A. We'll do a Q&A session with the FUA towards the end of the program, as we always do. And also, please connect with one another in the chat. Make it vibrant. Make it the Digital Career Success Series. So, FUA, all right, demystifying artificial intelligence, right? So let's talk a little bit about that and your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things to keep in mind as we talk about artificial intelligence and AI, which over the past year and a half, especially with the public release of OpenAI's ChatGPT, you cannot escape conversations about AI. I think one of the things to remember is that AI isn't brand new, right? AI has been around since the 1950s. That's when the term was first coined. That's where investments were first started to be made explicitly in computing technology that could mimic or to create artificial intelligence. So I think sometimes in the conversations about AI, some apprehension about interacting with AI or using AI is this idea that it is something that is really new and not tested, but different forms of AI have been around at this point for decades. What's a bit newer is the generative AI, and we can talk about that a little later. As when I think about what AI looks like and how it works, I think essentially about it being statistical predictions. So AI takes in a lot of data, generally more than you and I can keep in our heads at one time, or certainly more than I can ever access in my head at one time, and processes that information, runs a bunch of statistics and probability and analysis on that, and then generates something out. Maybe it generates out predictions, maybe it generates new content, but that's essentially how AI works. Takes in a lot of information, processes it, makes inferences based on it, and generating some output. So that's how AI works. Lately, we've talked a lot about generative AI, which takes us from sort of predictions about technology or predictions about the data, predictions based on data, to generating new content, generating new text, generating new pictures, generating new videos, generating new sounds, and more. That's sort of the next level of AI. And that is a lot of what your chat GPTs, your mid journeys, and other tools are based on.
So excellent, and thank you for kind of giving us the definitions on both levels of that. As we kind of speak about it, I always, I realize that people out here, they want to know how to get involved, and I think it's really important that they maybe even understand a little bit about how you got involved. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So
Yeah.
how did this come about? Listen, we're on a platform, we consistently hear about the importance of women being involved on the back end of creating some of these tools. We also hear
Yep.
about underrepresented groups, people of color, Black people being involved, so we don't miss the boat necessarily on this particular topic. And so some of the machine learning kind of has some of our input in mind as well, because it can be culturally biased at some level. So how'd you get involved in this?
Absolutely. I am someone who has loved technology since I was a little girl. I loved playing with remote control cars. I loved just experimenting. I loved playing video games growing up, and that sort of love and interest in technology translated to me deciding to pursue a computer engineering major when I was in college. And most of all of my career since then has been working with technology. I first started working with artificial intelligence directly while I was in the White House now close to 10 years ago. Wow, time flies. But during the Obama administration, and working to bring together some of our nation's experts on AI in the research space together for a couple of working groups to say, what is the future of AI? What do we need to keep in mind, both as we research and as we develop some use cases and guardrails around what AI needs to look like. Um, the conversations I have now, though, and a lot of the conversations I've helped to build over the years, I want to emphasize to people that not everyone needs to be a computer engineer, a computer scientist, an AI expert to be able to participate in the conversations about how AI is being used or how AI should be used in the future. Regardless of your background, whether you are technical or non technical, know that you have a place at the table. And that's really important because it is not as though technology and AI specifically is some sort of naturally occurring resource and we walk down to the river of technology, scoop it up, and now we have AI for all. Right? AI is created by humans, it's governed by humans, and it is used by humans, and you being a human should be able to participate in those conversations. It's also important to know that you have a say in this because the way algorithms are used, the way AI is used, can affect your life. Right? We see from time and time again how algorithms are being used to help decide who gets access to healthcare, who gets access to housing, who gets access to promotions and to jobs themselves. Algorithms are used to help sort through large volumes of resumes, large volumes of claims data, and more. And so, if you are not participating in sort of these conversations about when and where to use AI, these decisions are being made anyway, and they will be made in ways that will let you out. So, as you consider getting involved in conversations about AI, what can you do? So, I think the first thing is to look for ways to upskill. And now there are a variety of free courses about what is artificial intelligence, what is generative AI. Google has them, Microsoft has them, I think Amazon has them, and a host of other services have courses to actually teach you some of the technical things. I think the other thing is to start playing around with these tools to see what you like, what you don't like, when you can get them to show errors or hallucinations. That's one of my favorite things is to get in Chat GPT and see how long it takes me before Chat GPT gives me something absolutely ridiculous back. And to do that. But I think again, it comes down to know that regardless of your technical capabilities, you can participate in these conversations about how and when AI should be used.
Your professional work history is so amazing. And as you were speaking about kind of how people can get involved, if you don't mind me asking, your work at the White House in the Obama administration, was it around those types of issues, people getting involved, policy? What was that? What was that like, and what was that about for you?
Absolutely. I was when I was at the White House, I was the executive director of the White House's National Science and Technology Council, the NSTC for short. The NSTC is the way by which the federal government, so all of the federal agencies get together and set long-lasting policies and research and development agendas for all sorts of technology across the federal government. The NSTC at the time I was there had about 130 working groups, I think, on everything from artificial intelligence to cybersecurity to plant genomics to STEM education. And so my role there was to say, how are we bringing together our PhD experts from across the federal government to really say, what are the capabilities that we need? How does that then translate into grants that may come from NSF or NIH? And how does that translate to the FBI will own this part of cybersecurity research and development, and the Department of Defense might own this other part of cybersecurity research and development. Through many of those groups, the groups used the open comment process or response process that is available to all that several federal agencies use. Several state and local government agencies have similar processes as well. Whereas they are working on something, they're thinking about something, they put out a request for comment, and people like yourselves, like myself, now that I'm not in government, can submit ideas, can ask to present at a meeting, or in some cases can actually respond to draft versions of policy documents or research and development plans that have been put out for comment. And so those are some of the ways that engagement happened then and continues to happen now. I think what's even more exciting is that, especially at the state and local governments now, governments are, I think, generally much more open to and trying much more frequently to engage in more participatory forms of policy making, which means that in addition to these formal calls to react to draft documents, several state and local government agencies are creating more communities or more community meetings where they are hearing from their constituents directly. So I think that's another way to be involved in policy making, if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it was something you were extremely interested and involved in, and I want to thank you for kind of laying the groundwork for a lot of us. Many people, uh, you know, they're intimidated by AI, even the conversation. So I'd like to talk about some of the positive cases for it and how we can use it. A lot of people often say that they believe that AI will take their jobs, and technology, industrialization, things of that nature, just historically, a lot of opportunities have been created from those different movements historically in our country. But there's so much pushback on, AI taking jobs. I know there's been some McKinsey studies and things of that nature, especially on how it will impact Black males, individuals from underrepresented groups, just from a skill set standpoint. But then, as you're starting to look at some of the applications we see now, even people are being impacted at higher levels. But to your point, there are a lot of resources out here that people can take to acquire the skills, learn a little more, and kind of stay current in the space. So How do you view the positive cases for AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do just want to acknowledge what you pointed out, that AI will take some jobs. AI will significantly change many more jobs than it takes, I think. But I think it's important as we talk about technological transformation that we're honest about the positives and the negatives of what technology looks like in societies and in communities of color and Black communities specifically. Um, so we're honest with ourselves about what some of the positives are as well as what some of the negatives are. Somewhat along those lines, I heard it's actually I think a story on NPR recently about the transition from of phone operators, and that being a technology that you used to have to call and talk to the operator to be connected, and now you can just call someone directly. And in that, they looked at, well, this new technology is something that is going to change jobs. And they said, we'll be able to retrain everyone. People will be able to take new jobs. And that happened in several cases. But there were some people who were never able to be retrained. And so did have that permanent impact. And I think we see that a lot of times in technology, and it's important to be honest about it. Now,
Sure.
that said, so I just want to acknowledge that. That said, of course, there are many positive use cases for AI. So some cases that I'm aware of or have worked directly on deal with, improving graduation rates. For example, through a previous organization that I worked for, we partnered with a university in New York City, who their dean had noticed that they had a lot of students who started and completed their freshman year, but did not graduate. And so the question was, why aren't they graduating? Like many four-year institutions, they were focused initially on making sure people complete their freshman year. And so they said, well, why are people then not graduating? And so because it was an academic institution, we were able to look at 20 years of data and look specifically at people who had completed 3/4 of the credits they needed to graduate, but didn't end up graduating. And so we were able to run a bunch of data science and AI models on that data in order to then go through and predict students who had completed 3/4 of their credits of graduation, but were at risk for not completing. We were then also able to look at the number of interventions that were possible and say, for a particular student, here are potential interventions that may be able to support them in their process of completing their education. And then that information was given to an actual a human admissions officer, a human student support employee, who then made the final determination as to what intervention would be made, and then did that information. And through that process, the university saw an additional 1,000 people, I think close to 1,000 people over 2 years graduate, which I think translated to I've forgotten the percentage increase, but it was a pretty sizable percentage increase
Sure.
of that population that was graduating, but also only at a cost to the university of about $250 per student. We've also seen over the past couple of years generative AI to do things like go through a bunch of research and do a lot of modeling to discover new drugs. None of these drugs, made it into human trials yet, but to discover new drugs, to discover new antibiotics, something that hasn't been done in 60 years. I'm not a biologist. I don't know that, but I'm told it's very impressive that we haven't found a new antibiotic in 60 years. So I'll take their word for it. So we see that. Or we see, I think another use case I've seen that I'm really excited about is the way that we're supporting language translation, actually the preservation of languages by using generative AI. So you've seen this in a lot of indigenous populations, even here in the US, but as a Ghanaian immigrant or a child of Ghanaian immigrants, I'm really excited about this possibility for continuing to use generative AI to really empower people in their own native languages and to engage in technology and in the world in the context of their languages.
Yeah, that is amazing. I've listened to some subject matter experts in this space, right? And even business leaders, and they speak about they're concerned at the pace in which it's moving. They didn't anticipate that things would move as rapidly as they have been. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because I think both the technology is moving fast and businesses are moving fast, but at the same time, businesses in the world is moving really slowly. Through my work A&B Advisory Group. We work with private sector companies. We work with industry. We work with nonprofits. We work with academic institutions. And in nearly every conversation I have, someone says, I feel so behind the times because everyone else, I'm reading all of these reports about how everyone else has fully adopted AI or has really strong cases of AI. And, my point is that if everyone else is saying everyone else has done it, then at some point we haven't all done it. So I think that there are certainly leaders in this space who have figured out ways to really integrate AI into their business operations, to integrate AI seamlessly into a lot of their processes, both the traditional AI and the generative AI use cases. But a lot of people are still figuring it out. I think that's on one end of people who have, figured it out, and then people who are trying to figure it out. And then you have people who are actively sort of opting out because of some of the ethical concerns around what it means to, actually compensate people for their data that the AI is trained on. There is a lot of labor around building generative AI tools that require sort of manually tagging of data that is not well compensated and sometimes can provide, can inflict some type of harm on people who are doing that work, especially if they're sort of manually tagging really negative information, violent information, and the things like that. There was some reporting on that last year, especially as Chat GPT's use grew, showing that people had to spend days sort of reading all of the horrible things on the internet to mark them as, do not touch this for the rest of us. And so people are opting out in that way too. When I think about what it means to move forward with I do think that we need to continue to say, yes, there are positive use cases, but how are we wrestling with some of these issues, especially around the inclusion and improving of the data sets that AI is powered on? If AI is powered by data. And so if data only shows, let's say, white males in the population, then any algorithm is only going to be relevant for white males in the population,
Sure.
forgetting the fact that most of us are not. And so there's an example where Amazon a couple of years ago had an internal tool they were developing to identify who would be the best managers and who might make the best executive. And this internal tool said that the people who would make the best managers and executives were essentially white men who'd gone to a handful of universities in the country. Now, is that actually the case? No, but Amazon's tool was developed based on their data, which had overly indexed on white men from a handful of universities.
Sure.
I'll say they did not end up releasing that tool, but we have seen cases across the country and across the world where, because of these sort of imperfect data sets and not correcting for data sets that, frankly, do not recognize, especially people of color, especially women, have really bad impacts on people of color, on women especially.
So let's take a deeper dive into the ethical concerns. Listen, this is the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. We have Afua Bruce, Empowering Futures, Women Leading the Way in AI. Listen, we're going to continue to go on. Please drop your questions in the Q&A. We will get to a Q&A segment, but let's go to the next slide. It's ethical concerns in AI. Keep going, please, with the slides. Let's make our way to the ethical concerns slide. So we'll jump right in and kind of see where that goes. Not sure what the slide is here. I believe I'm showing
Yeah, so sure. So I think I've talked first about the ethical concerns about what data is powering these systems. And if we're not honest about what the data looks like, or even if we're not honest about what the data is telling us when we try to use these AI tools, that's a big AI concern. I think another sort of broad concern I have about the use of AI is when people talk about AI being operating as something out of a science fiction movie, and that someone somewhere created an AI tool and we're just going to let it run forever and only make decisions that are what the AI tool wants us to make. I think that is a horrible way to think about using AI. And instead, I'd encourage you to think about using AI as something that is in the loop of your decision making. So, as you are in the office, how can AI help you maybe take notes more efficiently in meetings? That is in the loop of decision making. If you are using AI to do some of these predictive analytics, such as um, the graduation rates example that I gave earlier, right? The thing that made that really useful and applicable is not just that it did the analysis and it the tool itself didn't make the final determination. It said, here is the analysis, here are the suggestions. Now a human be involved in this so the AI is in the loop of that decision making as well. So I think that's really important. I think also, recognizing that by design, generative AI even is not perfect. And I like to give one example of generative AI being not perfect, or I should say one way that I describe it to people is actually back from my days as a Sunday school teacher. And I taught the 4 and 5-year-old class. And so I remember one week saying, like, class, what did we talk about last week? And this little boy very confidently said Jesus, which, was a good guess. And, was very confident about that. But it was wrong. We talked about Moses the last week. But you can tell, in his mind that he went through and thought about all of the information he had in his mind. I'm in Sunday school. What do we often talk about? Jesus. It feels like a good answer. We probably talked about Jesus. But that wasn't what we talked about. That's how generative AI works, right? It goes through all of the information. It takes the prompt that you give it. It goes through all of the information that it has, and then it gives you the likely answers. And so oftentimes it will be correct, but sometimes it will be incorrect. And so if you sort of just say, any AI tool is going to be right all the time, and we will let it be right all the time, that will inevitably lead to problems sometimes. And if you're using AI in literal life and death situations, or things that are really affecting people's quality of life, or at your companies, things that are really affecting bottom lines, that can have really bad circumstances.
So even at a user level right now, so we're still kind of, for lack of better terminology, fact checking the information that comes out of the system or algorithm. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I would say AI is most useful. The sort of text generative AI tools that you see, you still have to think, right? This AI is not going to replace thinking. It is artificial intelligence. It is not human intelligence.
Yeah.
And so you still have to bring some of yourself to this, right? In the same ways that, if you are, I think of this maybe similar to using spell check in your computers, right? We didn't always have spell check automatically built into word processing tools. And then got added, and you sort of had to manually do it, and now it sort of automatically does it for you. But if I am typing something and spell check automatically changes something, and I just keep typing and I don't go back and reread it, this will work well most of the time, but sometimes it will not work well. I can give you a personal example of when I did not go back and check, and it was not good. I had a friend whose mother had been in the hospital for a long time. She'd had a stroke. Um, you know, I contributed to the GoFundMe once or twice, and a couple of months later, he posted a picture on Instagram being at his mom's house. So I quickly, type a message to send to him, and end with, "How is your mother doing?" I must have mistyped, because when I went back to the thread, I noticed that the autocorrect had changed it from "How are you doing?" to "How is your mother doing?" to "How is your mother dying?" Which is
Oh,
not the question that I wanted to ask at
no,
all.
not at all.
And so that is, something coverable. That is something that has changed, sort of has really helped what we do in just our typing, whether on computers or on our phones. But I think that is an example of what can happen with AI as well, these errors.
Yeah, I want to speak about questions about compensation for creators and things of that nature as well. I would like to
Yeah.
take this opportunity to bring Angel on. Angel was joining
Yeah.
us, so so I'm sure she will lighten the lift as she comes on. So, Angel, are you with us?
I certainly hope you guys can hear me. Good morning.
Yeah, definitely can hear you. Can't see you. but we appreciate you joining us today. Afua has been literally leading the way on this conversation. Excited to have you here as well. If you don't mind, I don't know if Corey can go back to the original slide, but you can please share a little bit about yourself with our audience.
Well, thank you guys so much for your patience. I am actually here at the NVIDIA GTC conference, but I certainly wanted to make time for this important discussion. My name is Angel Bush, and I'm the founder of Black Women in Artificial Intelligence, where our mission is to educate, engage, embrace, and empower Black women in the artificial intelligence sector. The genesis, just a little bit of background about me, the genesis of Black Women in AI actually started with Usher. I do not know Usher. Usher does not know me. However, I was in the midst of creating a robot, and that robot's name was going to be Usher. And that robot was going to bring me hot cocoa anytime I asked for it. And so in the midst of trying to develop this robot, I went down this rabbit trail of research, YouTube University, Coursera, anything I could get my hands on to understand how to build this robot. And so I started attending different events. And I attended one event where they continued to talk about artificial intelligence. It's the fourth industrial revolution. And in those moments, I looked around and I did not see a full reflection of myself in those rooms. And I said to myself in that moment, well, you certainly cannot have a revolution without Black women. And so that was the genesis of Black Women in Artificial Intelligence.
Wow, we definitely appreciate you. And I guess you came in at the right time because we're getting ready to go to the slide about using AI technology. And the first bullet point there is AI can solve your problems. And apparently, the problem that you were looking to solve is that you wanted someone to sing while bringing you hot cocoa. And I admire, I admire that part of the conversation. But I know you've seen this through a lot of different lens, and you've taken on a leadership role through your organization in creating a space where people, Black women, can kind of, I guess, kind of co-network to discuss AI, technology, machine learning. And really that's the problem that you're solving right now. Am I correct in that?
That is correct. Our mission is to educate, engage, embrace, and empower Black women. And in doing so, we've partnered with a number of organizations, including NVIDIA, which is one of the largest tech companies in the world. Also Amazon and Capital One and Create Labs and all of these different organizations. And what we do is we are a professional membership organization, and we we provide access and opportunity to our members. We actually have 9 members here at NVIDIA GTC, which is a major tech conference, and it's just such a phenomenal turnout. And I want to see more African Americans attending these conferences so we know what's on the horizon when it comes to AI.
I love it. I love it. So we were speaking about kind of learning how the technology works, right? So people are confident in using the technology. And I think I know Afua spoke about some coursework and things of that nature offered by tech companies that will allow people to at least receive some information and acquire some skills that will allow them to at least hopefully stay current or at least stay comfortable in the space. As your organization provides opportunities for individuals, specifically Black women, is it a situation where you think people need to know how to learn and how to use AI and technology coming in? Or do they need educated on that? It seems like we're using it every day just naturally right now as we all walk around with computers in our hands, basically.
It's a hybrid of both. There are members, in particular with Black Women in AI, 85% of our members have a bachelor's degree or higher. And some of them work at some of the finest universities, our professors at Howard University, our doctors, our lawyers, and some of them are just getting into AI. They're pivoting into AI. And one of the things that I encourage everyone to do is find out where you fit. Whether you want to continue on in the career that you are currently in, it will be transformed into AI. And so figure out where you want to fit, then do the research on that so that you can get the skills that you need. Yes, we are all consuming AI right now, even on this call, but now we must become creators. It's not enough for us to be just consumers of, when we're looking at Netflix, that's AI, it's a recommendation system. When we're going into the grocery store and we're doing the checkout, some of us, we remember back in the day when there was a real person, that helped us in the grocery store. And now we have this self-service type of thing that's going on, but that's all AI. And so we are consumers of that AI, but it's important that we begin to we transition into creators and learning what is AI. How do you figure out where you fit? We're releasing a custom chat GPT, a custom GPT that will give you insight into, okay, I'm interested in ice cream, for example. And you put that into our custom GPT, and it will give you insight into how you can use that interest in AI. And then it will also go even further to tell you what courses you need to take in order to, again, transition that interest or that love or that passion for ice cream into AI. And so we have to start looking for these resources to figure out where we fit, because AI is going to impact every job market, every industry that we are in.
Afua, speaking about the impact, I think it's only right that we speak about responsibility. So please, we can go to the next slide. I'd like to bring you back into the conversation to kind of drill down a little bit on this. The AI in the loop rather than trusting AI, right? That like to make decisions. What are your thoughts just on the responsibility? Whose responsibility is it? Is it a groupthink thing? Like, how are we moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I spoke to the importance of using AI sort of in the loop of your decision making rather than just sort of trusting AI to make all of the decisions for you, right? We should always be centering humans and our use of technology, and not recreating some of these dystopian science fiction movies that we've seen. I like to think about what would be an empowering use of technology. When I think about how I want my life to look like, when I think about how I want businesses to look like, how is technology supporting that dream, rather than saying I have a technology, we're going to force it into different situations and then just hope everything in the technology goes well. We have many years, even centuries of data that says that does not work. And so when I think about responsibility, I just want to pick up on some of the things that Angel talked about as well, about the importance of having people at the table for sort of this decision making, and educating yourself on how the tools work. I think that as we continue to see AI sort of spread out into society more frequently, for those of us who have access to broadband and more, we'll see sort of a divergence in how AI looks like and used. There will be one set of AI tools that are developed where AI is just sort of added into products. So it's already being used, as Angel pointed out, in things like your recommendation algorithms for Netflix or for your favorite shopping tool online or something like that. AI is often powering a lot of those recommendations. I think we're also seeing companies such as Microsoft and Google, I think, as well, embed even generative AI into their products, right? Microsoft has a Copilot, which includes now you can turn on generative AI to help you in your writing of emails and help you going even through your whole inbox and pulling out what's most relevant, or creating your presentation decks and how you can take go from notes to presentation decks with images more quickly. So we're seeing some of these tools just be embedded into existing products. And so I think recognizing that, and also recognizing that it may not be perfect, and you're still going to have to think. I think that is responsible use of AI in that case. Then we'll also continue to have people creating new things with AI. And here I think it's important to think of responsibility one, and in making sure that we have a diversity of people doing that. There was a lot of press recently about, I think it's Google's Gemini product, which was generating images that, depending on what media you were looking at, were too woke, and that it generated a lot of people of color in their image searches, but also then added people of color into historical situations where it was not a fit. For example, I think people use some prompts for World War II Germany, for example. So it's important to recognize also that if you are on the side of people who are creating this technology, or you're seeing this new technology being created and used, perhaps in your workplace, perhaps in a community organization and others, that, if you see something, say something. If something doesn't look right, if something looks skewed towards one end or the other, question it. It could be either by design of the AI, or it could be revealing some significant bias in the data sets. Both of those are things that can be corrected for, whether that is updating the AI algorithms themselves, whether it's updating the data, or whether it's choosing to use or not to use AI in that particular situation. So I think that's another way of thinking about responsibility. And then I'd say, actually, the third way of thinking about responsibility is about showing people how AI can be used in something that is learning alongside other people in communities. There are organizations like Black Tech Street out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. There are a couple of, I think, interesting partnerships between universities and community-based organizations that are explicitly looking for how can we use AI in ways that support the Black community? How can we use AI in ways that are supporting social workers? How can we use AI in that way? And so there are ways that people are having intentional partnerships with industry, with technologists, with policymakers, with community members to say, let's actually have a day. And I think Black Tech Street just did this, where we educated people a little bit on the technology, and then we go through and say, what are some prompts we can write together? When would we want to use this AI technology, or when we would not? And for that day, they had artists, they had members of different religious communities, they had others, brought together there. Again, there's an example in I think it's out of Indiana University. I'm forgetting the name of the program now, which again is saying, let's partner with social workers to see for this profession where people are always overworked and overwhelmed, how might we be able to use AI to sort of come alongside them and to help generate better outcomes? So I think part of responsibility of AI is saying, really, for communities that have been historically marginalized or overlooked, how can we help strengthen these communities by making sure that as we're defining use cases, they are for these communities.
It's the Urban League Job Network's Digital Career Success Series. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson. We're here today with Afua Bruce, Angel Bush, women leading the way in AI. This and all of the Digital Career Success Series programming can be found at a future date on our YouTube channel, Urban League Jobs Network. All right, Angel, I want to bring you back into the conversation before we jump into the Q&A. And, this is about breaking barriers and enhancing visibility. So I'd like for you to speak a little bit about your thoughts on how your organization and other organizations like yours are breaking barriers.
We're doing this in a way that is strategic. I don't believe that you can go into this arena with engineers and technologists and all of those things without being strategic. And so when we're talking about breaking barriers in particular, we have to be strategic. We have to create a plan, write the plan, make it plain so that we understand where we want to go with this, whether that is being an entrepreneur or whether that is being a part of corporate America. And one thing I have to say before I leave here today is that we continue to talk about, we want a seat at the table. And I will tell you clearly that Black women in AI, we don't want a seat at the table. And I know that can seem controversial to some, but understand this. We don't want a seat at the table that does not include power, authority, and influence. Because if you give us a seat at the table without those three things, then we're wasting time. Because the most important thing that can happen when I am in the room is actually what happens when I leave the room. What is being said when I leave the room? What is being implemented? What is being done? What is being embedded in a part of your system when I leave the room? And so it is not enough for us to say, oh, okay, I want a seat at the table. No, for one, we can create our own tables. That's number one. Number two, if I am in your room, even if you have to put it in small writing, I want you to understand that I want power, authority, and influence. Because if you have none of those things, we're just talking. We're not making an impact. And so that's the important thing. The key thing we have to remember when we keep talking about this table is it's more than enough to just be seen, because sometimes people invite you for your name. Not to change the game, they just want your name. They want the photo op. All of these things are happening. It is the truth. I am not saying all organizations are like this, but if you don't see a change after you leave that room, then you've wasted your time and the company has wasted their time. So let's make sure that we are being consistent and conscious of what is happening in this space. We need to work with a sense of urgency so we can break those barriers. And again, most importantly, become creators and not just consumers.
Indeed, indeed. We are going to jump into the Q&A segment of the programming. So I'm looking through a couple of these questions here, and I'm not gonna self-select, but I do want to touch base on a few of these, right? So let's go here, and either one of you can kind of pick this up. But where are we at here? Yeah, Dominique. Are there any ethical or privacy concerns using AI tools for capturing meeting notes, specifically speaking to board meetings? Afua, you wanna chime in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, there are privacy concerns. In short, so the way generative AI tools work is they are trained on a lot of data. They start out by being trained on whatever data set they have. For many of the popular ones, it is the entire internet, or the entire internet that is not behind paywalls. And then they are continually trained based on additional interactions you have with it. So if you are using a note taker like to converse, your information can then be fed back into the generative AI tool. There are some products that allow you, based on their terms and conditions, to say that this is going to be a private conversation and it is not going to be fed back in. You can opt out with some products for things like your email or meeting notes, so that that information will only go to train sort of a mini generative AI tool for yourself. But if you're using sort of a random off the box tool that doesn't have that, then yes, you should have concerns that what you are saying can go back into the sort of big data set that could then find its way into someone else's output later on. That said, I do use note takers for a lot of my conversations.
Okay. All right, got it. Angel, I believe this question is probably directed towards you. I'm interested in joining your group. My background is business, marketing, and technology. I'm getting my certification in AI. Can you provide information?
Yes, thank you so much for that. Please go to our website at blackwomeninai.com. Anything associated with the organization, just type in Black Women in AI, whether it's our Facebook channel, it's Black Women in AI, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everything is under the brand of Black Women in AI, and we certainly will welcome you in joining.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. I'm gonna use this question here. So the question is, most of our Black youth get their forklift certifications to work in a warehouse. Let's see, should machine learning replace this particular training for our young Black people? I think, there are trades and people have skill sets, but I think a multi-tiered approach to just learning and being a continuous learner is extremely important. Do you guys have any thoughts on that question? Either?
It is
So
hard for me to, oh, go ahead,
Go
Angel.
ahead. So
Angel,
the question is,
take the lead.
I'm sorry?
I said, take the lead.
So is the question, should AI replace how they're learning or the job itself?
I think it's the job itself.
I don't believe that AI should replace any job. However, if I am preparing for any career, and it doesn't matter whether it's a skilled trade or whether it's an administrative assistant or what have you, if I am training for any job, I am training with AI in mind. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics tells you in particular the specific jobs that will be replaced or impact, will have a large impact, and in particular administrative assistants. Trust me, just start learning, start pivoting in terms of AI in whatever you do, because there may be automation as innovation continues. A lot of jobs will be displaced. There will be innovation coming very soon. And don't think it's going to happen in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. All of these things are happening at lightning speed. And whether they consider an ethical framework or not, that may be debatable. But what is not debatable is, again, we need a sense of urgency to find out when we're in these trade schools or any other schools, whether it's a university and you're studying to be a doctor or whatever it is, find out if they have an AI program, and if it is required, just as they require you to take science and biology and statistics, all of these required courses to graduate, find out wherever you're going if they are requiring you to take AI in order to graduate.
Wow, I love it. Listen, as we're moving along through this particular edition of the Digital Career Success Series, I'd like to give you guys an opportunity to leave the audience with closing remarks. Afua, I'm going to go with you first. Do you have any closing remarks for our audience?
I would say that AI is not magic. It is created by humans, it's used by humans, it's governed by humans. So regardless of your current level of familiarity with AI, please learn more about what it looks like. Please learn more about how to talk about it. I think that will help empower you in conversations within your families, within your communities, and prepare you for the job market, whether you're looking for a promotion or for a new job. And I would also say that there is a lot of potential with AI, but we must continue to stay vigilant and continue to make sure that this technological advance will include communities of color.
I can appreciate that for sure. Angel, any closing remarks for the audience? Yes.
First, thank you guys so much for showing up. And that's the number one thing I always tell people. 95% of success, I believe, is showing up. And so you guys have shown up to find out more information about AI. That's number one. Number two is get started today. When you leave this call, it doesn't matter that you attended this call. Again, that's just a waste of your time if you do not go out and find one technology that you will test today, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Midjourney, which is an image creator, whatever it is, leave this room and test it out today. Start small, bite-sized, things that are digestible to you. And also, one thing that we often leave out is start attending these conferences. It is so important for you to find out what is coming up next. We've had tickets to, people send us tickets to, free tickets to conferences. Reach out if you're interested in going to a conference. If we have the capability to provide a conference pass, whether it's virtual or in person, connect with us. It is important for you to know what is going to happen. A sense of urgency has to be taken today, not tomorrow, not next week, but as soon as this call ends.
We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Yes. Listen, you know, we have the best panelists in the world on our show. So I want to thank you for joining us today for Empowering Futures, Women Leading the Way in AI. If you would like to stay connected to the work of Afua Bruce, please do not hesitate to lock in with the, she is on social media, of course. We can go to the next slide, please. She is on social media, of course, and you can lock in and get the book, The Tech That Comes Next. Congratulations on that, author Afua Bruce. I love it. I love it. And you can connect with her on social media or check out the websites as well. Also, if you are looking to connect with Angel Bush, doing some great work there with Black women in AI, please lock in. She is on social media, as you can see, and you can find her. Know what? Take a look at the Black Women in AI website. I was there. I bounced around. I found out some great information. And as Angel had mentioned, she definitely is all about supporting people with getting more information. So that is a place where you can get that. Before we close out today, let's go to the next slide, please. But you can connect with me, Kenneth L. Johnson, as you know, eastcoastexecutives.com, where you can find all the social media links. But before we close out today, as we close out our Women's History Month programming on the Digital Career Success Series, I'd like to take this moment to thank all of the amazing women that are behind the scenes and make this work, and also that I get a chance to work with on the national conference from the National Urban League offices. Of course, this would not happen without the guidance and support of Wanda Jackson and her team of incredible women, Dale Johnson, Marsha Tyler, Vivian Walker, Kanjit Jordan, and Adanya Humphreys. Yeah, Corey and I and Dave, we show up, but they're driving this programming, and I sincerely appreciate them all. On behalf of the National Urban League and the entire UL Jobs Network team, my name is Kenneth L. Johnson. I'd like to thank you, our audience, for joining us. Of course, I'd like to thank Afua Bruce, Angel Bush, for just making this work and happen today. Please circle back. We're finding our way out of Women's History Month, but we're going to keep great programming coming. Join us April 3rd, Making Money Moves. Byron Logan, I know he's one of the guests that week. I'm excited about that as well. So I hope to see you all back here in 2 weeks, April 3rd. Angel, Afua, it's been great. The Urban League Job Network's audience, it's been great. Thank you so very much. Kenneth L. Johnson.